In the past number of decades, there's been a large decline in the number of species of insect, as well as their occurrence in habitats and their range across the globe. Now, there are studies that this is due to an insect apocalypse. This is a phenomenon meaning that insect abundance, as well as their overall biomass, is decreasing at a drastic rate. Now, it's difficult to prove this through scientific literature. Sample sizes aren't large enough, as there are many insect populations in the world. There are also many insect species either not studied or not studied well enough. Not to mention that many experiments are conducted on insects living in areas with high human populations. For example, pollinating insects, such as bees, have had a decline in many populations. This threatens many ecosystems, as well as human food sources. The majority of flowering plants are insect pollinated. 16% of all flowering plants, in fact, rely on bees as their main pollinator. This includes around 400 crop species. There's been a large decline in the biodiversity of bees. Their decline is largely due to the destruction of their habitat. Beetles have also been going into decline. Now, they are mainly affected by global warming. In some forests, they require snow covers over their forest floor. Now, the snow covers contribute to the decomposition and carbon storage within the soil. These processes are very important for their ecosystem. Temperate forests that have become warmer now have lower beetle populations. The last 20 years have seen a large decline in monarch butterflies in North America. The reason for this isn't fully understood. One possible explanation is the increased use of insecticides on plants. Another is that invasive plant species often carry parasites, as well as cause a decline in the native plants that the butterflies ingest nectar from. These butterflies represent many insect populations on the continent. Their decline is the same as many other species, and action must be taken in order to prevent this from continuing. These sources prove that the idea of the insect apocalypse is based on scientific evidence, at least to some extent. However, not all of the scientific literature points to an insect apocalypse being the case. Well, at least not for every species of insect. Some insects may be invasive species. The official definition of invasive species, which is made by the US government, is with regard to a particular ecosystem, a non-native organism whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human, animal, or plant health. An invasive species population often rises rapidly and at a rate that affects surrounding native species. The German wasp, Vespula germanica, has become an invasive species all over the world. Since it is an invasive species, the main problem is that its population is rising too rapidly. This is one example that proves that while the insect apocalypse may be true, it isn't necessarily for every single species of insect. However, as the other examples have shown, most species are affected by the phenomenon if it were to exist. Most conservation efforts in the world seem to emphasize large vertebrates, though invertebrates, particularly insects, make up the vast majority of animals. Without insects around, many ecosystems would collapse on a global scale. The insect apocalypse is not fully proven as there are not large enough samples to be used. This isn't possible to fix due to the large numbers of insects that exist on the planet. However, we can look at different populations of different species all across the globe. However, scientific journal entries may be biased or contain shortcomings. The media may over-exaggerate a small decline in one population to mean all the insects in the world. This means it's not a fully proven event. There still is much research that needs to be done, as well as reviewed afterwards. There is a lot of scientific evidence that backs up this insect apocalypse. However, it is not proven, and some of it may be based on media headlines used to attract readers.